Introducing Jill. Jill had 38 years of experience working with delinquent youth at the Arizona Department of Juvenile Corrections with foster children through the court-appointed Special Advocates CASA program at the Pima County Juvenile Court Center. At least 15 of those years involved recruiting, training, and supervising volunteers. While Jill retired in April of 2022, she has served on the SAVMA board in the past, holding positions of membership committee chair, president-elect, and president. We simply could not let her retire when she loves volunteers this much. And we love Jill this much. Jill is an avid reader, likes to craft, and loves spending time with her grandson. Thank you, Jill, for talking with us today.
No problem. Another role I have played for, or maybe taken over for the last at least 3 or 4 years, is the facilitator for the annual awards. It's a subcommittee for awards and recognition. I work with the panelists and the nominations and go through that whole process from the beginning of getting panelists, now doing some training, to picking up awards and making sure they show up on the day of the event. So we've got 4 objectives today. So we're going to get some idea of the essential components for a strong award-winning nomination that includes measurable impact, storytelling, and aligns with the award criteria. And short of the timelines, those are probably the 3 most important things to make sure you have a winning or competitive nomination. We're going to also look at some nominations, things to avoid, and mistakes that weak applications include, such as a vague language, failing to admit the criteria, not being completed. And we're going to review the selection criteria using the SAVMA Awards as an example. And we're going to look at a few nominations. Some were award-winning and some were not, so that we can compare and look at those to see, just to see. So the first most important thing is to plan ahead. Start thinking about your nominations now. We tend to, and we, I mean, a community, SAVMA, nonprofits, whatever you want. If something's due July 31st, odds are we're not going to get it in much before July 31st or July 31st. I'll reiterate through the whole thing, our deadlines are absolutes. So if you wait too long, it's a snooze you lose kind of thing. But it's not easy to write a good winning nomination really quickly. If you, period. So, and review the nomination criteria for the person, or review the criteria first, see what criteria are for each of the categories, and see who you might have for what category. You're only allowed to nominate 1 person per category from your organization. But again, start thinking ahead. Look at who you want to nominate, who you want to be publicly recognized. And again, deadlines are open, well, I guess after this meeting, but now through July 31st at 5 p.m. It will be closed at 5:01. They are definitely absolute deadlines. Extending things creates all kinds of havoc on the next steps of the whole process. I already talked about looking at the criteria to determine the best fit for eligibility. And if you have any questions for qualification assistance or anything related to nominations, please just email savmatucson@gmail.com. In the subject, put, question about nominations or whatever, and then it will get to the right person. So here are a few award-winning nominations, and these are award-winning nominations for Volunteer of the Year. One was back in 2020, I believe, and one was just last year. So the first one we're going to look at, and I'm not going to read to you. You all can read it, partially because your face blocks off the right-hand side of my view, so I can only read about 3/4 of each line. But take a minute, look at it, and tell me real quickly what you think. And look at the category. Again, I can't see it because I've got a black thing there, but there it goes. That moves some. Describe how the nominee positively impacts the community through the organization or cause they serve. So this little bunch here is about that. And when you're done, you can let me know. Alexis is done. Okay. Is somebody who can see everybody else? Are they all acting like they're done?
Everyone is done.
Thank you, Veronica. Okay, so remember when we go back here to, oh, I don't go back. Why? Measurable impact, storytelling, and aligning with award criteria. What do you think about Miss Rose's nomination as it relates to the impact of the community through organization or cause?
She does so much.
She does. She's a wonderful lady.
Very
Really well
involved
deserving.
in multiple areas.
But is there storytelling? We know a lot about Miss Rose.
It's not just where she is.
Whoops. What?
I said it paints a picture of who she is, the type of person. It gives an idea of the impact with numbers, hundreds of children gather, and all the places where she's making even more of an impact.
Absolutely. Okay, let's look at the second section of this, still Miss Rose. And this section is describe how the nominee exceeds program expectations, inspired and motivates others, served as a role model to other volunteers, and shows initiative and leadership. Okay, how are we doing, Veronica?
It looks like we're doing well. I think we can proceed.
Okay. What do we think of this one?
I think it's good because it shows like the small things she does and the big things. So that's one way that it really demonstrates how she exceeds program expectations.
Absolutely. And talking about inspired and motivating others and being a role model, I mean, what better than I want to be like Miss Rose?
Alexis, did you want to say something?
Oh, sure. I mean, I'm happy to participate. I
Oh,
was
sorry,
say
I just saw that you were not muted, so I
no,
thought you
it's
were
all
waiting your
good.
turn.
I was just gonna say, I like that the question asks how they're inspiring and motivating others, and that it's communicating not the tasks that she's completing, but the impact on the other people she has around her.
Exactly. And a lot of what we look for, and we'll get to it in another section, is the impact and the depth and the breadth of I'm going to say nominee. This Miss Rose was a volunteer, but yes, it definitely shows that. And I've met Miss Rose. I want to be like Miss Rose too, but I don't have the energy she does, and I'm a little noticeably younger than her. Okay, let's look at the next one. Describe the quantifiable impact for consideration, the depth and breadth, number of hours, number of clients helped, or the positive results achieved. Veronica?
I think we're good to proceed, Joe. I know Jessica's having some tech issues, but I assume that she's still with us and can hear, so we can proceed.
Okay. Okay. So what do we think?
One's pretty straightforward.
Right.
Definitely addresses the quantifiable info, right? I mean, it goes into further depth, but wherever we could give some metrics, we are citing them, and then also touching on the positive results achieved with each act of volunteerism shared.
I have a question, or would now be a good time for questions, or should I hold on to them?
You can go ahead and do them now since we're.
Okay, great. So my question would be, Rose sounds like an incredible example of a volunteer nominee, because she's so involved in so many places. How would how would a volunteer coordinator really understand the depth of what they're doing outside of your one agency?
Um, it's relationships, talking with them, and not that volunteer engagement professionals play favorites, but if you have somebody outstanding and, in your opinion, award worthy, you're going to be talking to them more often, seeing what's going on and help, doing your work to keep that retention and all those other things. So maybe building a relationship, and not that you don't talk to your other volunteers. Please don't get me wrong. You do, but your outstanding ones aren't just fly by night volunteers. So you do tend to build a relationship with those people, and get some of that information. And there's nothing wrong with just asking. What else do you do in the community? You're so good
Yeah.
here and you do this. Do you do anything else?
I see. So I wouldn't necessarily, I mean, unless you would suggest it, would you reach out to the other organizations that they mention and say, hey, what's the impact that this volunteer has had at, like, I'm thinking if she's at Gospel Rescue Mission, how would Gospel Rescue Mission know what she accomplished through her literacy efforts? You know, like they're two different orgs. Um,
They
I,
likely asked her, Alexis. So I know out of all the organizations she listed, one in particular had her as a consistent volunteer and supporter of their agency, and they simply just either knew a little bit about what she did elsewhere, or as Jennifer in the chat had referenced, annual paperwork lists affiliations and activities. So they could have looked up what other agencies might have her listed, but they likely just knew a little bit about Miss Rose and then just asked, what else do you do, Miss Rose? And she
yeah.
likely gladly gave information. And then she may have already known, the different events. They can quantify some hours. Or again, as Jennifer said, connecting with those other nonprofits. Everybody loves to gush over, their favorite supporters and would have gladly given that information.
Okay, that makes sense. I wanted to make sure that that was, I think, the way everyone was doing it. So, okay, cool. Thank you.
Right.
But
And
also,
go ahead. I'll go ahead, McDaniela.
Jill, so s- I was with the food bank for 5 years, and maybe I've nominated before a volunteer that he's there at the food bank every day. That's really where he's giving all of his energy and attention. So that wouldn't make less of a nomination, right? If like all these hours and people and impact is just from one organization.
Absolutely correct. And our next nomination we're going to look at, Steve was only with one organization, and it'll talk about the impact he made on through his, I don't want to say standard volunteerism, but his main
Mhm.
focus as a volunteer, as well as other things that are going on. So we definitely, they don't have, Miss Roses are like maybe not one in a million, but pretty darn close.
Yeah.
Not everybody, it's only, special people that are Miss Roses. So let's go on to the next one. This is about Steve. He won in 2019 or, whoops, sorry about that, 2019 or 2018. And so again, we're looking at how he positively impacted the community through the organization or the cause that he served. Okay, and this is not a complete nomination for Steve. Let me just say that. There's the nomination that was written has more specific things in regards to a few very special cases that he had, and special in the way that they are, not that foster kids are typical, but it was definitely, and cases aren't typical, but this was definitely, they were far out from what the majority of cases were. We could not find the full nomination because I don't know, but this is some of the information that gives you a good idea. So what do we think here? Did we meet about, is this positive impact on the community through the organization or causes?
I think so. And to your point, Joe, again, I know that you had to pull together what was available. There are portions of this that would naturally break out into the other questions to answer to help develop the story, like the 1,700 hours. the 12 children, like that's quantifiable in the other question. So there's
Mm.
parts and pieces that could be developed, but still really strong. I mean, the content's there.
Right, right. This actually, after Steve won, Kristen Cinema saw something in relation to our award ceremony and nominated Steve for a Presidential Citizens Medal of Honor. So this is stuff that was pulled from that nomination. So, but some of I wrote the nomination, so I know what it said. But yeah, some of the stuff that it talked about was Steve is older, so he was in the foster care system before they had somebody to be able to speak up for the kids, like the CASAs do now. So he was very invested. So now describe how the nominee exceeds expectations and has motivated others and served as a role model to volunteers and showed initiative and leadership. Are we good?
I think so, Jill.
Okay. Any comments on this?
You can see his direct involvement in trying to encourage other people to support, to be better versions of themselves, to come and get involved, and so on.
Yes. Last page. Describe the quantifiable impact, the depth and the breadth, numbers of hours clients help, and the positive results achieved.
So it's answering all the questions, the hours, the clients, and the results, not just one.
Right. And this part of it doesn't have as much storytelling as Miss Rose's does, but the actual nomination did talk about how he was the CASA for a young man who had a terminal disease. It was a long time terminal. And he had to have an operation. And, Steve took him to his surgery, was the last person he saw before he went under, first person he saw when he woke up, took in another kid as an advocate after a domestic violence incident at the home. Mother unfortunately did not survive. So, he took on some of those other cases that had more storytelling to them. Just we couldn't find it, darn it. Okay,
Jill,
next.
I wanted to add there a good recommendation of Jennifer as a reminder that there is a word count per question. So that could also be why it would be wise to start early, to plan that out to where you're, pulling your really good storytelling pieces in the first section, focusing more in depth on the impact on that second question, then having all of your numbers prepared for the third, because you are capped with the word count per question.
Right. And I think in a later slide, if I'm not mistaken, that word count is listed someplace, but that's a good reminder. Because you can keep typing and it'll just give us where it comes to that final number. Okay. So now we're going to look at another nomination, a culmination of a few nominations put together. And we're going to look at the questions and see if they answered the questions and if those people met the criteria. This nomination is for a volunteer engagement professional. Okay, so the criteria is somewhat different. How they embody professionalism and ethical standards, models best practices, and engages volunteers effectively.
We are good to proceed, Joe.
Thanks. Did this answer the questions?
No, it just stated ethical behavior, but doesn't explain what that ethical behavior is.
Right. And, the volunteer engagement is modeled to her colleagues through daily interaction with volunteers.
Which just sounds like her job. She does a really good job at her job.
Yes, it could almost be bullet pointed.
Right.
So let's look at the next one. In this one, how do they take a leadership role supporting the profession of volunteer engagement, both locally and nationally, and commits to continuing education in the volunteer engagement profession?
Ready to proceed, Joe.
Okay, so what do we think about this one?
I think they missed the mark on really giving details about the cultivation of connections and the laying of groundwork. That's really what it should have focused on. The other pieces speak really highly for Sarah. But again, this is doing her job well, personal development, which, yes, is continuing education, but had they expanded on the cultivation aspects and the groundwork, that would have been more compelling.
Absolutely. Anything else before we go to
Good
the
point,
last?
Jennifer. Jennifer pointed out that there was no reference to the local or national leadership as a volunteer engagement professional. And again, I bet the cultivation of those connections would have at least addressed that local aspect. But yeah, that was totally left out.
Right. And I don't know, because I don't remember, I've looked at so many nominations over the last several years. Even if they're a member of SAVMA, that's part of the local profession.
Good point. And then Jennifer also added, although they did reference, her MSW professionally, which is addressing the continuation of education, that is not relevant or specific to a volunteer engagement professional. So it's not really answering the question.
Right. Because typically not a lot of MSWs go into volunteer engagement. Um,
I'm
there
also
may be,
not, oh, sorry.
go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm also really not hearing anything about the continuing of education for the people she leads. Because there's continuing education for yourself, but then how do you continue the professional development of the volunteers you oversee also? Are you offering trainings? Are you providing resources? And I imagine she is, but this doesn't say that.
Right. Absolutely. And there wasn't any, sorry, I gotta, anything on best practices either. Okay, so the last one, the quantifiable impact for consideration, depth and breadth again, number of volunteers, positive results achieved, the results, the roles held and the growth of career.
We can proceed, Joe.
Okay. What are your thoughts real quick?
My first thought is hundreds of volunteers is not a number, and a variety of programs is also not a list of programs.
Right. Anything else on this? Because I got another question for you after we discuss this one. Have any of you written grants before?
Yes.
A little.
Does this maybe sound like a grant proposal?
That is what Jennifer also put in the chat. It really does.
Yeah, a little tweaks and you could probably get some money for Sarah or the program or whatever.
It really just to me reads more like a job description. This is what she does. These are her daily tasks. This is what her role is. And we get that 2,000 volunteer hours at the bottom, but it's not really communicating the impact part. You know, without her efforts, local families would have struggled greatly. How?
Mhm.
How are they struggling less because of this? Or,
Absolutely.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
Um,
to add to that, because Jennifer put into the chat that fundraisers are not volunteer engagement professionals. It's a very different mindset, and this, speaks directly to that, right? I mean, it's beautifully written in regards to exactly what Alexis pointed out. This is a job description. This is someone doing their job very well and how they do it and all the different complexities of that position, but it speaks nothing to the volunteer engagement professional experience and how she is impacting her volunteers.
right. And I forgot to mention, because I think in the first section of this, when they talked about the fundraising, and right, that's not what volunteer engagement professionals, they may be assigned to do that, but that's not what their job description overall nationally or globally is. Right.
I'm reading it again, and our largest program, what is the program? There's just so much more opportunity for more detail in here. What is the largest program?
Alexis, I'll tell you, they did actually list that stuff. That was removed for anonymity. This is an actual submission. In fact, this is two submissions squished into one, removing as much identifiable information as possible.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Jennifer also added that the metrics shared align exactly with what we're talking about, that this is just her doing her job, right? Because 20,000 hours, for 500 volunteers is a 40-hour per week volunteer job.
Right. And Alexis, you were talking about how it doesn't talk about how it talks about what she does, but not how she does it. And when I was a volunteer engagement professional, I had several things, but one of my most important thoughts about my job is I need to help and take care of my volunteers the best I can so they can take care of whatever it is they're doing. You know, when I was with CASA or juvenile corrections, or if you're PAC, you want to do that so that they're better at walking dogs, those kinds of things. So that was a very good point you made. Okie dokie. So how does selection work? What happens is we review all the nominations that come in. We do take out some nominations, but they are ones that are incomplete. And you would be amazed at how many we get that are incomplete, or are not appropriate. And we do get those. We don't get rid of very many, but we do triage them out. So we have a selection panel, and these are people from the community. They are people who are aware of, support, and volunteer in the community. They're volunteerism in the community. They are not, for the first time this year, going to be any of the nonprofits that we work with or might nominate somebody, because that just muddies the waters. But these are also people who may just have a very good general knowledge about volunteerism, or in a certain genre, if you will. You know, they may understand medical volunteerism at hospices and hospitals and such. So they may not know what your program is about in detail. And you can tell by the nominations, it's real important to sell your nominee, as well as let them know what the program is, what they do for the program. Because, you know, if they can't understand that, they're not going to score it well. So after the deadline closes, we evaluate the panelists evaluate the nominations by assessing from a score from 0 to 10 for each criteria. And each category, volunteer of the year, exceptional governance volunteer, youth of the year, corporate or group volunteer of the year, program of the year, and exceptional volunteer engagement professional. Each of those 5 categories only have 3 criteria in their nominations, like the ones we just saw. So maximum score for a perfect score is 30 points per nomination. So we ask our panelists, please read them all and then score them, so you don't have to go back in and change and those kind of things. So only nominations with a score of 8 to 10 per category, a total of 21 to 30, are likely to be considered for an award. There are some exceptions, but they are very rare, and we don't like to make exceptions. Total scores with 10 to 20 are weak, but potentially awardable in the future. So I got to go back. I didn't finish with the ones who are likely to qualify for awards. If they assign a score in this range, it we asked that it be further with a decimal point, with 30 representing the best. That's part of why we asked them to review the nominations in that category first and know what they've got, and then go through and score them. Because if you were a panelist and you read 6 other Volunteer of the Year nominations, and you're scoring them as you go along, and these people are great and wonderful, and you are scoring them as such, and then you come to a Miss Rose nomination is the last one you look at, you're kind of like, well, holy crap, I got to adjust everything because, you know, she's that good. So the decimal points help. Reviewing everything beforehand helps them. So if they score between 10 and 20 points, they could potentially get an award in the future, or that may be an area where we make an exception. And I know we have in the past, and it's the one that I can think of is it was for a Youth of the Year one year. The young man did amazing things. The nomination was very weak, and he was the only nominee. So we made some of those exceptions, that exception. We don't do that a lot. So shoot for, you know, one that'll get scored 21 to 30. And if they score 0 to 11, they're unacceptable. And we're not even going to really look at that. Now the panel has, and we will discuss it, but and we'll talk about that here in a second. Ratings are given to each nominee based on the overall judgment of its value. We ask them to be demanding, apply the highest standards as you review the nominations. Because sometimes, and I mentioned in another slide, where we need your nominations and the panel need to look at facts, not fluff. Because a lot of fluff can make somebody sound really, really good, but there's not a whole lot of good facts or enough facts. Now, you might think Miss Rose's had a lot of fluff, and it really didn't. It just had a whole lot of wonderful flat facts. So here's another, be aware of personal biases in the nominations. We have the panel look at that. You can tell when a grant writer has submitted a nomination. And in one of those combined nominations that we looked at for the not so great nominations, it was a grant writer who submitted part of that. Successful nominations should be exemplary. The nominee works across many organizations or is a crucial participant in the community. They are inspirational, and they're impactful. The nominee has an impact on the community. And I think all of those, the first 2 nominations we looked at, fit all these. That's why it was so easy for the panel to choose those winners, or awardees, I'm sorry. So this is just a copy of our score sheet that the nominees get. They are sent these along with the nominations. They will have their names filled out for all the nominations over here. And they will score, and it's set up. This is not part of what I do because this is beyond my techno-peasant status. But they send it out and it calculates everything. We ask for people to put comments in also, because there are some people that are scored very closely. And comments good, bad, or indifferent, but always professional. You know, Susie seems to work at a lot of organizations, and although Steve works only at one, what a huge impact he has, those kind of things. And then there's this whole complicated process where somebody, again, not me, puts all of the all the panelists' scores together and comes up with the cumulative score for each nominee in each category. And then the variances are reviewed also. And if the scores awarded in a category all indicate one nominee as the top pick, we don't need to have a discussion as a panel selection committee. We didn't have to, we talked about Miss Rose, but there was no decision there. And after everything's accumulated, the panel gets together with the facilitator, and I just facilitate the process and the discussion that they have to officially award honorees. So discussions revolve around the differences. If one panelist rates someone highly while another rates the same nominee low, we need to have some discussions on why that is. Sometimes it's a matter of, oh, wow, I misread that. Or sometimes there could be some bias or some, maybe not towards the nominee, but some inside knowledge of the program that they're with or whatever. All comments are shared regardless of the score. So all the comments on everybody, the panel gets the total cumulative thing, and everybody reviews it. Everybody's comments are added on there. We do not say, I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jennifer, who scored what for the each individual. But maybe we do.
No, that's why it's off. Yeah, we don't have that in the shared Dropbox. Nobody sees that, but you and Caitlin.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. So now, this sounds easy. What's the challenge? Assuming that some of the challenges, assuming that the panelists will understand what your organization does and why it matters. Don't assume they know anything. They do know
That's why
stuff.
Alexis's comment was so good about, well, what program, be specific. Yes, this is where you want to be specific, and especially not use that lingo of acronyms.
Right. Timelines are absolute, and it takes time to write a good nomination. We are people who wait to the last minute. Because as volunteer engagement professionals, we are wearing multiple hats all the time, and doing multiple things. So plan ahead. And nominating someone involves more than writing the nomination. You need to know that person. You need to know about what they're doing. You know, you can do bullet points on just about anybody, but that's not going to get you an award-winning nomination. And also, please let your nominee know that they're being nominated, because we've had people decline honors after they've been selected. And as much as we say, no, they really deserve this, we don't want to put them in that kind of a spot. And, you know, that's not good for retention. So let them know ahead of time. Let them know ahead of time what it will entail, because there are things that they need to do afterwards. There's going to be a video shot. They're going to have to go. Obviously, we can't 100% predict that everybody will show up, but I think they always have. But they need to go to the award ceremony to get their award, to be recognized. And it just, we don't want them to decline after they've been awarded.
That's big, even for the community service recognition. Like the food bank bought a table last year, and we brought somebody that maybe we shouldn't have. Like, she did not want to go across the stage. She did not really want her picture taken or even in the brochure. So, yeah, that's a big one to remember.
Absolutely. And you're able to do the community service recognition if your organization buys a table or is a sponsor for the event.
Which is
And there's
nice. If your
no,
person doesn't win, you can still nominate somebody and honor them that way.
right, because there is no selection panel for community service recognition. Those are kind of you pay to get the acknowledgement, and the organization pays for them to get the acknowledgement and such. Again, facts are important, but not facts, so much fact that it could just be easily be bullet points. But they're more important than fluff. Because fluff is just that. And you can hide or exclude lots of facts and make it sound good with lots of fluff. But we pick community members for the panel who can see through that. And you can tell by the way it's written if you've done selections often enough. And the depth and breadth questions are key. You know, if you look at Miss Rose, she, you know, had tons of depth and breadth and lots of kids and hours and on and on. But Steve did too, even though he worked with a different number of kids, because they don't all do the same thing. So depth and breadth means different things based on what the volunteer does and what the agency asks for. So, common mistakes: not meeting the criteria or submitting disqualified individuals. Read instructions carefully. After I've got someplace to go, so later this evening or first thing tomorrow, I will send you all a copy of the nominations handbook. Is it on the website yet, Jennifer?
Yep.
Okay, it's also on the website. Read that carefully before you start. Poorly written or missing information. Use the space provided, but don't shortchange yourself. If you need to use every single word count, do it. But don't get so hung up on that you shortchange not just yourself, but the person you're looking to get the recognition. That's why you plan ahead. You don't start on July 29th for something that's due on July 31st. Writing in the first person. Don't use our, we, or I. Nominations are used for promotional purposes, and an incorrect tense structure can cause process delays and even render the recognition unusable. And not submitting the appropriate title. Volunteer is a pay grade status. It's not what they do. You know, for example, you could have volunteers who are drivers, Alexis, and you don't call them volunteers. They've got a title for drivers, right?
Yes. So I think what you're referring to is having the word volunteer in the name of their title is not really a title. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Objectives. Did we meet our objectives? Do we think?
Yeah, this was helpful. Thank you, Joe.
Okay. Oops, hit the wrong button, sorry. So if you have any questions or comments, you can email me at savmatucson@gmail.com. And I will be sending out a bonus. Again, I have something after this, so it'll be probably tomorrow morning. It's an action verb handout so that you're not using the same thing over and over. You know, they display, you know, different action verbs, those sorts of things, because sometimes too much redundance in some of those, it's a little hard to read. So any questions on anything now while we're sitting here?
No questions from me. This was so helpful. Thank you so much. This will be my first year nominating someone, so it's really nice to see the examples.
Yay.
Good.
I want to
Yay.
say thank you, Alexis, so much for joining and for participating. And I really
Yeah,
hope that
as
we
soon as I knew
next
SAVMA
year.
nominations were coming up, and I had that in the back of my mind, but then I saw the email that you were going to be doing this. Oh, I have to go
Oh,
because
that's
I
so
want to
good.
know what you guys think and what the best way to do that is. So thank you so
Perfect.
much.
No, thank you. Thank you. That's
Okay.
great to have
And
you.
again, if you have questions, shoot us an email. Just not the night before they're due. Unless, of course, it's a website problem. But then don't ask me. Any other questions, comments? I did pretty good on time.
You did excellent on time. The only thing I wanted to add, Jill, that I know was the question my first go around doing nominations was if I had to be selective in regards to I could only nominate in one category. Is that true?
No, it is not. You can only have one nomination per category from your organization. So, you know, you could technically,
Nominate for all categories as long as I had a candidate that fit that description.
absolutely.
Perfect.
And if, let's say, Alexis and you want to nominate the same person, it's the person who sits on both of your boards. Whoever's nomination comes in first is whose nomination will be looked at and will be the nomination review, the official nomination.
Makes sense. And one more question, Jill. So I know you mentioned that this year for the selection panel, SAVMA is seeking to choose individuals that more than likely would not be nominating, so it wouldn't be a conflict of interest. But are you looking for some leads on panelists?
Yeah, I need I'd like to have 10 on the panel, which means I probably need to ask at least 20 people. And if we have 20 on the panel, then that's wonderful as well. But community leaders, people in the community who understand volunteerism in our community, who support volunteerism. We've just had the problem in the past where we have people have to, Miss Rose, the president of her board, and that's what she was nominated from her board as a volunteer of the year for that organization. He did the nomination, but even if he didn't, he couldn't vote on her because in that category because of conflict. And that makes things a mess. We've also had people who have been on the selection panel and been nominated, but not been an honoree. That's even stickier and messier. That just sucked. So yeah, we're gonna try to get, and I don't mean to say impartial because I know that people who nominate can be impartial, but on the surface of things, we're gonna do it with people where there won't be conflicts.
Thank
So if
you.
anybody comes to mind, shoot me an email. I will have a letter that'll be going out probably next week. I'm gonna start looking to people, or maybe the week after, no, next week. Because the week after is the mixer. But sending out invitations, I don't have to send them all at once. So if you come up with somebody after I've already sent out the initial, that's fine. But I'm gonna give them a whole blow by blow on what goes on the time commitments, the dates, those sorts of things. And also for, I think, Alexis, and I don't know who else is on here that isn't part of our board, the, you can resave the date if you haven't already for the awards. It's now going to be on Friday, the 22nd of January, rather than Thursday, the 21st. We did not reserve the TCC in time, and we got our regular day and time. Oh, we're still being recorded. Filled before we got there. I was going to say bogarted from us, but filled before we got there. So, anything else? I turn it back over to you, Miss President.
Well, that's all.